Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wolverine Studios Twitch channel. My name is Brooks. I'm one of the developers at Wolverine, specifically for our football games, our pro football and our college football. So a while back, we launched our college game, and this stream is going to be chatting about our pro game. So if you have any off-the-cuff questions, you want to type them up in chat, let me know kind of what you're thinking. Um, I'm more than happy to try and answer them, kind of tell you where we're going, what's on the plate for the upcoming release. And yeah, so just start off, any of those folks in chat already, if you could confirm that you can hear me okay, and then I will kind of get started and start going through some things. All right, looks like we're good to go. So for Pro Football 25, for this stream at least, I'll be here for a little while. I just wanted to kind of kick things off. I know a lot of folks have been asking about the game. You know, are we going to have a release, or when is it going to be? What's it going to have? What's it going to look like? Those kinds of things. And I mean, the honest answer is we're still working on it. We're working on it uh, pretty feverishly. We're in beta testing. There are some folks that have been helping me for the last few weeks look through things, and we've expanded that team a little bit to help me find more edge cases and just all around use cases with the game. So there's a lot of things that they've been finding that I'd like to get fixed before we go to first access. So I'll be working on those this weekend. First access will happen soon. I can't give an exact date. I know we're working on some behind the scenes back end office kind of things before we can get that going. So as soon as it's ready for release, at least first access, we will definitely be letting everybody know on social media, on our Discord channel, on the Slack channel, the website, and so on. I also plan on trying to do a few more of these live streams just to highlight certain aspects of the game and to get in there and let people ask questions or, focus on certain areas of the game. I'm more than happy to do that. So look for more of these streams going forward. So to start off, I'm going to assume, just for the sake of this stream, that nobody here or nobody watching this is aware of the college football 25 game. I'm just going to assume you haven't seen that because there could be a lot of new things here that we've already done in college football 25, but you might not be aware of it if you're only interested in the pro game. So I'm going to kind of just go from scratch, kind of explain where we're at right now and what you can look forward to. So the the first aspect that we want to bring up is that we've switched platforms. We've gone to a platform that is a little more native to the operating system. It's just some different ways of rendering things on the screen, different ways of handling data. But it was kind of a combination of being able to leverage assets we had in our previous games, but also update the way that our data interacts with the UI. We did it for a couple of reasons. One, we want to unlock some future paths forward to the new features and new behaviors that we'll be able to do. The other is we wanted things to run a little bit faster. We were starting to hit limits, self-imposed limits, but limits nonetheless on how much of the UI we could render on the screen. It led to some screen changing issues. For some folks, it wasn't that bad. It's kind of a slow, laid back kind of, you click here, you wait a second, you click somewhere else, you wait a second. It's not meant to be rapid switched, but the new platform allows us to do a lot of that stuff a lot faster. So the first thing I'll highlight on here is things like switching between screens is almost instantaneous at this point. So you'll see just going around all of the different screens, you'll get quicker rendering, you'll get a lot more data on the screen loaded at once. We've pretty much done away at this point with all pagers, and gone to this infinite scroll kind of concept because it seems to work really well and it helps with filtering and sorting and those kinds of things. And it will render, in this case, there are thousands of players. The college game has 15,000-ish players that it's loading up in a grid almost instantaneous. So these kinds of screens work really well. They sort real quickly. Um, and like I said, there's no more need to do the paging left and right. You're able to sort by what you want. You can enable multi-sort by holding down uh, control so that you can get multi-sort of these things. So in this case, it's sorting by agility ascending and then run blocking uh, descending. Doesn't look like that came out right, but still in beta, so there's still some things that we can do to tweak these things. But that's the idea, is to have this new updated grid that loads quickly and is a little bit easier to use. Um, so in general, data loads faster, screens switch faster. So hopefully it makes things a little easier for folks to enjoy. There are many aspects about the UI that we've tried to keep the look and feel the same, but we've improved it in places where it needed to be improved, or we had nagging issues that needed to be resolved. Things like being able to hover over the player names and not get that behavior where these things would stick. So now, with this new update, the popover kinds of things they've been working a lot better in this new version, so that we don't have that lag where sometimes they get stuck on the screen. There were just lots of little nagging issues like that we were able to take care of going forward in this new update to the UI. So some of these things are going to be performance. Some of these things are going to be just quality impacts, quality of life kind of things. So hopefully this will work out better for those people who already enjoy the game. So I've covered a couple of those things. The other fun little things that we've added for, I know this is a lot of UI talk, but these are kind of the main highlights. We can get into the details here in a bit, but there is a way to do a light mode at this point. Sorry for the flashbang, but we've gone light mode so that folks who don't like the dark mode can toggle back and forth. We try to support this everywhere so that just with toggling that one little thing, you could switch over. I know a lot of folks have been asking for the ability to switch between the two, so we were able to turn that on. We don't have it everywhere. There's some cases where we still keep the dark theme because we kind of like the way it looks and we like the way the logos interact and that kind of thing. Switching everything over to just stark white would be just not ideal for us. So we're trying to blend in the white theme and the dark theme so that everybody's happy-ish as close as we can get. So that's how that works. The other thing that I can't show here because I'm streaming, but you are able to expand the screen, and the font sizes and the layouts of things should be much more readable at larger resolutions. So hopefully that also helps folks who, depending on their hardware and their screen resolutions, where the other games were struggling to get really dense with our data. So we wanted to tweak those in places to make the game a little more readable and make the layout work a little bit better. There's some hidden little things that we can also do because there may be cases where folks like to zoom in. So it works similar to a web browser where you can hold down the mouse wheel and zoom in or zoom out depending on how much data you want to see on the screen. So that also increases the font size just for folks who just prefer a little bit more zoomed in look. It works better on some screens over others. Sometimes it'll add scroll bars and that kind of thing. But again, we wanted to give everybody the ability to kind of use the game how they like to use it. And that's kind of been our mantra for for several years now, where we try and do that kind of thing. So uh, next couple of things we can talk about. Again, if you've seen this college football 25 version, you've seen some of the things we've added there, but we've brought them over to the pro football game as well. One of those is staff positions. So the pro game, you'll have a general manager, which is this dude over here that handles certain parts of the game, and then you have the original head coach and two coordinators. But now we've also added in trainers, scouts, and positions coaches. And so these folks you'll be able to hire. They work the same way as during the staff stage. Instead of just focusing on these folks, you'll be able to fill up your entire staff. And each of these guys will handle different aspects of the game. So the trainer now has a greater, instead of everything basically being driven off of a coach or a coordinator, now we have more fine-grained guys to handle some of those workloads. So the trainer will be more impactful on things that trainers do, off-season training, in-season training, injury management, helping guys get better quicker or not get better quicker, that kind of thing. The scout will help during the scouting phase, which I can show in a second. And then all the position coaches are responsible for helping players progress at the positions they're responsible for. So you won't have like an offensive coordinator. Some of their ratings for improving players will matter less than the direct quarterback's coach, so to speak. So we wanted to bring over these things from college football. We got a lot of ideas on how to move this forward in future versions of the game. So we're laying the groundwork now to be able to have all of these different positions that handle different aspects of the game. So we're excited to have all that. Yeah, thanks, Garrett, for hanging in there and helping guide some of this discussion. I appreciate it. We can flip through some of these other screens. The roster screen should be very similar with the same kind of filters. The statistics screens are very similar to what we've had in the pro football games before. The depth charts, all of these screens are basically the same underlying engine, underlying structures. They've just been updated with a UI that's works a little bit better for things. So that's a lot of the team office page. Some of the major things that we're also looking at is scouting for the draft. So in this case, we're exploding out what you can do during scouting. It used to be you'd click a button to interview a kid, you'd click a button to scout the kid, you'd click advance, and then now you're at the draft, and there wasn't a whole lot of interaction back and forth. So what ends up happening now is you have different interviews that you can perform with the players. So some of these will be similar to your GM interviewing old college coaches, or your scout interviewing their old college teammates, or your trainer running them through some workouts, or the coordinators watching tape, whatever. The different roles that you have on your team coaching staff will basically run through these kinds of aspects of scouting. The other thing we've enabled is I'm in the scouting stage now, so I can interview a few kids. I can run through all of these, and bear with me, I haven't actually pre-tested this particular league doing this, but when I run through advance, it's going to go to the draft, and then I'm going to skip this. The thing that we've done at this point is you can leave the draft screen like you could before, and you can go into Scout Draft, and now these have all been applied. And when you view a kid now, or not a player now, I'm still used to the college game. When you look at a draftee now, their different interviews unlock different pieces of information about the player. So you'll have your scout talking to the college teammates, you'll have the head coach interviewing, you'll have the college coaches, which this one's GM, work out as the trainer, and then game tape for the position coaches. So as you check those boxes, you'll get more information from each of the coaches. So Garrett, there still is free information. There's still some of these scout grades and some of these coach grades that's still free, but some of this other stuff you need to actually interact with the player to unlock it. Um, I think we might be populating all of this for first round at some point, but we're still working out how we want to handle it because we want to really make all these different positions valuable. We want people to really have to make decisions on how in depth they need to go scout a player, whether they care more about the personality of a player or they care about workout and physical attributes and that kind of thing. So we'll certainly allow there to be this generic consensus information about a player, but for the goodies, you're going to need to interact with them. Um, and then there's an overall assessment that the coaches will do after they're drafted and they're on a team. So that's what's on the bio page. So this will be another amalgamation of all of that information, which is kind of fun. But you'll notice that even though I've started the draft, these are all still checkable. So we've set it up where you can go back and maybe use part of your scouting points to interview a list of players that you expect maybe to fall into your range, or maybe you just want to scout quarterbacks, and that kind of thing. You'll be able to do that, and then once you get to the draft, you can then add more. You'll be able to use those points up, and every round of the draft will rerun the interview cycle. So I could add a bunch more on here, go back to the draft, sim a round of the draft, or just go through the draft, get from round 1 to round 2, and then this will trigger again, and the new ones will all lock, and then you'll be able to do it again for all 7 rounds of the draft. So this way, this takes care of the issue where, like, if you auto scout or if you the AI would just take the most important players at the top half or top third of the draft and would give you information on them, but then by the time you got to round 4, round 5, round 6, there wasn't any scouting available because it was all used up and there wasn't a way to go back and add more to it. So instead of doing phases, which we could have done where we do a scout phase 1, a scout phase 2, or whatnot, I decided just to tie it to the actual rounds of the draft going by. So you scout, pre-draft, you scout as many people as you want that you think are going to be there, just ones you want advanced information on, and then after round 1, you go add some that you think are going to fall to you in round 2, and so on and so forth. So hopefully that makes it a little easier for folks to manage the screen instead of having to be responsible for scouting 300 players or 150 players or whatnot. So I'm glancing over at chat. So Garrett, we haven't decided on the costs of all of the points yet. The scouting points are affected now by your scout and to a certain extent some of the other staff as to how many of these scouting points you get. Right now, they've all by default been set to 5 points, but that'll be changing because some of this information is a little more valuable than others. And we're going to ramp up that number, down that number, so that the scouting points number makes sense. Because it won't make sense if these are so cheap that you can just check every box on every player and still have scouting points. So we're going to make it more of a concerted effort by the player to decide what they want to do, what's more important, and which of these pieces of information for which particular players they want to use it on. So that's the fun thing about scouting. I think that'll really change the nature of how folks go through the draft. And then, like I said, being able to see more information, more immersive information that folks are always excited about. And then being able to tie in all the new positions, staff positions, is going to make this a little bit more of a fun feature for everybody. So that is scouting the draft. Finish the draft, and then I'm I'm going to go into some of these other things that we've done. There's some fun feedback that we got on magazines because we have all of this white space or dark space, empty space, and some of these screens. Now we're able to go in, make these a little more palatable. That was a fun little thing to add. Again, we're kind of showing off how quickly these screens flip. We'll continue to add more news. We'll continue to add all of this information as we have in the past. A lot of this is going to be the same or similar because a lot of it is valuable information. I can't touch on finances. There will be two buckets of money. One that is driven by your salary cap and by the setup that you have in your league configuration. So all of these financials, the way that you set up your mins and maximums by position, the way you set up your draft contracts, the way the salary cap is set up, all of that dictates the bucket of money for players. There'll be a separate bucket of money for coaches. So in this case, I have it set to 40 million. We're still playing with this because it kind of depends on the feedback we get and how many coaches fit into that budget and what kind of numbers make sense there. So we are still toying with this, but it will be a configurable item for folks to use. So that's the financials. There's another feature that we've added to college that we're bringing into pro, and that's the play calling overrides. Before I talk to that, I'm going to go back through chat. Durant is asking about internal hires. So the internal hires are okay. I'll just talk to it. The internal hires have to be there because whenever you get to the end of the hiring stages, and then there's no players or no coaches to hire, and they kind of disappear because you've moved on from the hiring stages, then there has to be a way to create a coach that gets generated and put onto your team, just so we can continue moving forward with the simulation. So we could look at potentially, instead of doing an internal hire, allowing you to look back at the coaching ranks and pick one of the unemployed coaches. Well, we're kind of expecting folks to do that during the coaching stage or the coach signing stages, and not necessarily like during the season. The internal hires are meant more for, hey, I just fired this guy because he's terrible, and I don't care who I get. I just need somebody to finish out the season, and then I'll hire somebody else when the coach stages come around in the next season. So we shouldn't be using the internal hires. Should be really poor quality coaches, and you should only be using those as a last resort. And like I said, you should be targeting unemployed coaches or trying to poach coaches during the 5 stages of coaching the coach hiring stages. So that's what I would do there. Garrett's asking about scouting accuracy tied to the scouts' ratings, and yes, the scouting accuracy is tied to the scouts' ratings. There's probably a mix in there of not just the scout, because it's not a one-man show. The rest of the staffs also play a part in it. If you got really good scouts as head coaches and coordinators, they might lend themselves as well into giving better accuracy. But yeah, the scout by far has the highest weight there. And the finance pages, some teams may have less than 40 available for staff budget. So this league that I'm dealing with here is kind of one of my test leagues that I've been running with for a while as I add some of these features in. So there very well could be some inconsistencies with the current team staff budgets versus the available money and how it works with firing coaches and some of those aspects. So if we notice that during testing with new leagues or with ongoing leagues, we can certainly look at seeing why you would go negative on your staff budget, but you shouldn't. Technically, you shouldn't be able to. Yeah, Durant, in the beginning when you create leagues and there aren't coaches available, um, it can cause issues when they don't extend their coaching staffs, either because they've had bad seasons or uh, they just trigger the logic a little bit too often, where they're just not signing them enough. Is what it comes down to. And then when enough teams don't re-sign their coaches and let them go into the pool, then they kind of all fight it out against each other, and against those coaches, and then they end up with nobody, and then they're forced to do internal hires. So if we go through beta, we go through first access, and you're still seeing that kind of behavior where you're seeing way too many internal hires, maybe not in the first season, because I expect when you start leagues, it can happen quite a bit. But once they go through a couple of phases of coach hiring, that should, for the most part, disappear. And if it doesn't, it's something that we can take a look at. Yeah, because I agree they shouldn't be they shouldn't be doing internal hires. Even the CPU should be grabbing coaches out of the unemployed ranks. Um, so yeah, all coaches are going to be. I'm not exactly sure about the question, but in general, when you go into hire coaches, there's there's groupings of them. So for head coach, you can hire head coaches or coordinators. For coordinators, you can hire other people's coordinators and head coaches. Um, I don't think we have it set up where you can hire other people's positional coaches to be your coordinator or your head coach. I think we're trying to keep that to a minimum. I'm not completely sold on how we're going to do that right now. Um, you wouldn't want to, because a lot of the position coaches are really bad at head coaching by design, right? We wanted them to all be not have like overlapping kinds of um, kinds of ratings. So you'll see the head coaches have their specialties for coaching offense, coaching defense, that kind of thing, and running the team. And then you'll see the coordinators are also good at coaching offense and defense and whatnot, and they're focused on other things. And then all the position coaches will be the ones that have the high ratings in training DBs or training quarterbacks or whatever. The scout will have high scouting ratings and not high other ratings, that kind of thing. So that's the goal, is to make them all uniquely positioned to handle their particular aspects of the game. But yeah, there could be cases where offensive coordinators are, you move them up to head coach and let them learn to coach a little bit, or you take a head coach and you put him in at an OC or DC if you feel like their qualities match up. And we do let those that came forward from the previous versions of the game, where we'll allow for that. Yeah. So I'm sorry for the pause. I'm catching up on chat. I would like eventually for position coaches to become coordinators, but I'm still on the fence about it. It won't be in this version necessarily, because I do want to keep them all separate until we know how this thing works. Otherwise, if you end up hiring a coordinator at 24 years old, that you plucked him out of somewhere, he just was randomly generated by the CPU, and then by the time he's 40, he's got tens in every rating. We don't really want that to happen, because that's not very realistic. So we're going to have to look at the progression of their ratings and make sure that it makes sense. And yeah, I mean, if there's some overlap there and you want to try them as a coordinator or whatnot, we may look at unlocking that. But just out of the gate, I don't think we have it enabled to be able to do that. Um, yeah, so in the basketball games, they work a little bit different. In the pro game, it's just I know they're different like ex players that have worked their way up into position coaches and then gone on to be head coaches or defensive coordinators and then head coaches. So we do want to look at doing that. I just can't commit to doing it out of the gate. I don't want people to get the wrong idea on how it's all going to work. So um, at least, I mean, we still have first access coming up, so who knows what all we're going to be able to get in during that period. So I'd love to get more more discussion going on that. So if you guys have ideas of things that you'd like to see, feel free to post them up on the forum or in our Slack or Discord uh, channels, and we're happy to keep that discussion going. So I'll cover a couple of other things. This stream has actually been pretty interesting for me to see what you guys are interested in. So I appreciate you chatting. Makes the stream a little easier for me to target things. I did want to bring up the play overrides. So the play overrides are specifically for folks who have passionate views on how the AI should handle different scenarios within the game. So the game has guardrails built into it to keep the results somewhat realistic, but there's still the case where coaches may make decisions that you don't necessarily agree with, or the AI will make a dice roll and it'll be a 20% chance of calling a run play instead of a pass play, and they'll call the run. And then it can be maddening when you're watching the games. You're like, well, why did they do that? They'd never do that. Well, the game isn't really built for absolutes. It's built for those kinds of calculations and multi, variable analysis on these things. So it could very well be they hit the 5% chance to call something, and you do that enough times and you're going to see it, and it kind of sticks out because you're not expecting it. But just like watching football on Sundays, every week there'll be some coach that does something a little bit against the grain, and that's just kind of the way the game is, and so the engine handles it that way as well. There aren't any absolutes. That being said, there are some cases where the game will make decisions that people just don't like. They're passionate about it. They fully believe in these things. And so instead of trying to make the AI perfect with all these dice rolls and not, which is going to be a nearly insurmountable task for me to do, we've added these overrides in. So the goal for the overrides is for you to put these processing rules in where you could pick what quarter you're in, you pick the yardage that you're at on the field, the time on the clock, any kind of 3rd and 1, whatever the case may be, whether you have a lead or whether you're behind, and then you tell it what you want it to do. So in this case, I could say the order is just the order that they'll evaluate in, but I could say if I'm in the second quarter and I'm on the in this case it's going to be 80-yard line, so I'm inside the 20, and then this would be 100. And then if depending on the clock, I could say with 0 minimum clock and then 120 max clock, this would be inside 2 minutes, or let's just say 30 seconds to make this easier, and then min to go, max to go, don't matter. And I could say, if I'm on 4th down, then I want to kick the field goal every time. So what this will do is instead of evaluating the AI will look at, well, what's my coach tendencies and what's the play calling tendencies and what's the scenario on the field, and how did the user set up all of these variables, and then what's the typical pro football norm, and then let me add a little bit for if you're winning, or there's hundreds of checks that it goes through to decide what play it's going to call, if any, or if it's going to kick or punt or whatnot. Instead of doing any of that logic, it finds your rule and it just picks whatever you tell it to pick. So this allows those folks to set up really complicated kinds of rules that it will follow. So if they really do want that absolute rule in there, this is how they would do that. So going forward, we do want to know when the AI is making bad play calls. We do want to know when the engine is making decisions that don't make sense or should be more rare than they are. Like if we're seeing certain things that's not just 20% of the time, but it's half the time they're doing this really weird stuff, then we can add more guardrails in to get the AI to do what we think it should do, what a normal head coach would call or what a normal play call would be. But it's going to be really difficult for me to get to exactly what everybody believes is right. And the last time we asked about this, we had people who were giving conflicting rules on how they wanted it to go. Some folks are like, no, if I'm here, I absolutely want you to kick. And other people are like, no, if I'm here, I absolutely want you to take a shot into the end zone. Oh, no, if you're here, I absolutely want to run the ball and get the clock even lower. And I can't make all of those things right at the same time. So no matter what happens, somebody's upset because it picks one of those three scenarios and then the other two folks are mad. So by adding this in, each of those people can set up the rules however they want, and then the AI will follow what their logic is, and then at that point, they should be happy. And then what I would like to see happen is for people to take screenshots of these as they build these rules out and share them with the community. If you find a really good rule that helps make the AI work a little bit better, or cases that you really do feel are absolutes, or correct some edge case in the AI, by all means, take screenshots of them, share them on the forum, share them, on our socials, so that we can actually educate the community on. Well, it helps me because if it's a case that everybody needs to implement, then maybe I can actually implement it in code and not make it an override. So that's the first case. The second case is other folks may want to take those same rules and implement them in their leagues. The overrides are league level, so you can't do this by team base. It's only going to be at the league level. So if you're in an online league, the commissioner would have to set all these up. If you're in a career sandbox league, you set it up once for the league. We may even add some imports or exports to it or whatever if it's something that folks really get involved in, and then we can make it easier to import and export it into all your leagues. But that's what this overrides is for. I really wanted to highlight it because I think this is going to take care of a lot of the edge cases that I can't catch, or that may be out there that people are frustrated with, that they really want the game to bend to their will a little bit more than being a little bit more random like it currently is now. But that's my big spiel on play overrides. And I think at that point I'm going to start wrapping up. Before I do, I'll look through some of the chat. So Garrett, the scout levels and the I think I can show this. So there are different ratings that the game gives. There's an overall rating, which is just kind of a balance of all of their skills and all of their personality traits and whatnot. But then there's a specific coach rating. So this is kind of how we differentiate between, you could have an overall rating of 2, but you can have a really high coach rating who's somebody that might be really good at special teams, but might not really be good at anything else other than that. So there are cases where we'll see that. This guy, he's a 1.5 star, he's 2.5 stars overall, which means he's got some extra skills outside of just being a coach that is raising that level up. I have not rebalanced these yet. I do want to get to a point where we have a lot more variety with these ratings. And you click on it and kind of see how these all lay out. So this head coach has really good at managing morale, high charisma, high loyalty. He's actually decent at coaching the defense. He's a little above average at preparation, not so good at training anything. So that's kind of what a head coach would look like, whereas like a head trainer is going to be, he's got high morale, he's really good at flexibility. This is a personality thing. But then he's not a particularly good scout or even good at assessing ability or potential. But if you look up here, training, well, he's not really good at any of this stuff either. I think this is because these guys are automatically populated. I didn't hire them. They're just kind of generated by the game. We can look at some other teams and see what those guys look like. No, this guy's not any good at it either. Well, this is trainer. Sorry. The trainers should be better at things like development and physical. So this is another case where I have to rebalance the way that these things are calculated, so that the trainers have higher stars specifically in that. The scouts should have high stars in scouting. The OL coach, like offensive line, should have high in physical and high in offensive line. So these guys are not generating exactly like I want them to, but that's something that we'll take care of as we move forward to make sure these all make sense, and you'd be able to tell pretty much just by looking at their skill set what coaching position they should be good at. So my apologies that not looking great in the demo. Again, this is one of my leagues that's been running for quite a while. Um, so MBB Mets is asking about full GM mode. Um, I'm not sure what GM mode means to you. That is something that we can look at, like especially for career mode, where if you're the GM, you can do certain things, and there's a bunch of different things that you can't do. If you're the GM, you can't set a bunch of this stuff unless you're a Jerry Jones GM kind of person. But we can look at locking down a lot more of this based off of your role. That's kind of the ultimate end goal for adding all of the staff positions, because if you are hired on as a team as the offensive line coach, you might only be able to do training for whoever is on your schedule, and that's it. You get a training schedule specifically for offensive line, and that's it. And everything else is locked out. So you wouldn't be able to set any strategy. You wouldn't be able to set any depth charts. You wouldn't be able to do any. Or maybe you could do depth charts for your particular position. But those are the ultimate goals that we're looking to implement. Not in this version. I can't commit to it for this version. We're already just kind of out of cycle as it is. So we definitely want to look at those kinds of things for future. But that's why laying the groundwork with all those positions is one of the fun ways of being able to unlock that kind of start as an offensive line coach and work your way up. It's definitely in the back of our mind. So we will keep an eye on that moving forward. Frequency of plays, does that play the role? If I called the play 4%, does the engine call that play exactly 4% of the time? Absolutely not. So the way that these work, these weights, and this is it's a math exercise, and it's very I understand why it's confusing. I understand it because I wrote it and because I've lived with it for so long. I understand what it's doing, but the general public may not. So this run pass weight, so there's two different pieces. There's the playbook percentages, and then there's run pass weight. So the run pass weight will think of this as 100 being the maximum that your league allows you to run a pass. So if you're in a league where you kind of have a 40-60 run pass split, then 100 would be the best you could hope for. If you put 100 on all of these things, would be 60% pass, 40% run. That's not really intuitive because people don't know what this number actually means because they don't really know what their guardrails are. So in leagues where they've set it up where you could be 0 to 100 with your run pass weights or with your ratios, then this particular form does go up to 100%. So if I set this to 100, normally what this means is about 65%-ish pass. The teams that pass the absolute most in the NFL rarely get past 65, 66, 67. They don't. Like most teams are really balanced when you look at play calling over an entire season. So the way it works now is by default out of the box, we have that kind of like 40 to 60 split. So if you put 100 on everything, you would end up at basically a 60% pass. So that's kind of how the play calling works. Now what this does is it evaluates what kind of play it's going to call. So if you put 100 in here and you're on fourth and medium, then 100% of the time it's going, or it's not 100% of the time, 100% of whatever your league maximum is, it's going to then look at whatever the playbook is, and then it's going to pick that play out of the playbook. So when you go look at your playbooks, then in this particular case, these are all like 4% chance, 1% chance of it picking that. So what it does is, okay, well, you told me to pass it, so I'm going to pick one of these passes. So it doesn't reevaluate that number to determine between pass and run. By the time it looks at your playbook, it already knows what kind of play it's looking for. So even if you loaded up a playbook with all passes and no runs, first off, it wouldn't work. Like if you tried to do a run and the playbook didn't have a run, it would actually drop back into your default playbook and pick something there. But assuming you have all of these things set up, the way it works is it evaluates what it wants to call first, then it looks into playbook for a matching play call. So that's the other reason why we have these minimums for how many plays you need to put into your playbook, because we want these to be realistic. We don't want playbooks where people can just pass 100% of the time and override all of the logic in the game. So that's how the frequency works. Like, yeah, all of these things kind of work together. It's big, nasty math equations that are not pleasant to look at, but we'll do our best to try and keep explaining them when folks have questions about them. So. The RPOs, so the way the RPOs work is that they're actually included in both, which can throw things off a little bit, because if you're in a play calling scenario where you're telling it to pass, but then it goes and looks in your playbook and it sees an RPO, it may call the RPO and then run. Because your quarterback, hey, he calls the RPO and then he ends up deciding he can't throw it, or he thinks it's a better read to do the run. So he'll do the run, even though your run pass weight says pass and your playbook said RPO, then that's how those kinds of things work. So yeah, an RPO for those purposes is considered both. What it won't do is call the RPO and then force the RPO to be passed. So if it does hit on one of those RPO plays, it is reevaluated at that point whether it's a pass or a run. So you can see cases where if you've got these things set up to 100%, you have nothing but RPOs in your second and short playbook, you're still going to have a mixture of runs and passes, even though you've set it up to 100. So just be aware of that. The RPOs behave a little bit different in these things. So that's how that works. So at this point, we'll start wrapping up. I will say that, yeah, I can look at the draft. Actually, I can't look at the draft card because I've already passed the draft. So at this point, like I said, I'm going to start doing, I'll probably do another live stream here in a day or two, and then we'll have another one a day or two after that. As soon as First Access is ready, I'm expecting days at this point, not weeks. We would have liked to have kicked it off, earlier, but we're working through some further things. So in the meantime, we'll be working with the beta team, cleaning up things, and then we'll let everybody know as soon as we can about First Access. I'm looking forward to you guys being able to tinker with it and give us your feedback. So this is the draft screen, and if I leave back out and go back into the scout draft, then I can interview some guys. This actually won't work as well because those guys will all be drafted in round 1. But if I go find some guys in round 2 and 3, you'll see how this works. If I do this and then advance, and if I'll just do a couple of rounds and leave, come back. So these guys have now been scouted. So when you click on one of these guys, you'll see your scout gives you some information, your head coach, your trainer, and then these things start to fill in depending on the information they were able to glean. So that's what a draftee page looks like. So the draft cards aren't similar to basketball. I mean, so from a design perspective, we like the design language to be similar between the football and the basketball games, but from an implementation standpoint, the games are completely different. The different developers, different engines, different ways of handling the data, different pieces of information. Gary is the basketball developer and handles all of that. I'm the football developer and I do all of this. Gary kind of takes the basketball games in the direction that works for for them, and I take the football games in ways that I like to see it. And both of us are doing as much as we can to make sure the community has a say in it as well, because ultimately the community is the one who plays the games, and we want to make sure that we get things in that they would appreciate. So I know Gary's big on that, and I'm big on that as well. So if there are things about the basketball card that you think would lend themselves well to football, please by all means write it up, and I can chat with Gary and figure out exactly how he's doing his, and if there's some things there that we want to blend in together. Um, but that's how that works. A plus scout grades and workout info. Oh, yeah. I mean, the scout saying, "Hey, you're an A plus at everything," and then the workout information being an F in speed. One of them's lying, right? One of them, one of them didn't do a very good job. So yeah, those are still things that I know Asger is working on this uh, pretty intensely, trying to make sure these things uh, are realistic and valuable in their own right. Um, I am in a sandbox league, so that changes kind of how some of these things work depending on what team you're logged in as and what team you're viewing as and that kind of thing. It's trying to figure out how to give um, the baseline information to people that once you're looking at it from your team, you see maybe a little bit. You see basically information based off of your staff, and if you try and look at somebody that's from a different team or not logged in, if you're in an online league or whatever, or if you're in a career league, then you see something different because we don't want people to be able to sneak all that information from somebody else's scout. So there's lots of things going behind the scenes on how this works, and it does affect the accuracy and those kinds of things. So you can see some odd looks. You're going to want to make sure that you get your points in and you actually get uh, all of this stuff figured out, so that when your time to draft comes up, you're ready to pick the best player for you. So okay, we've been going just under an hour. Went a little bit longer than I had expected, but I appreciate you guys asking all your questions. Um, like I said, I hope to see you guys in our chat rooms and you know cheering us on. And like I said, we'll get this in front of everybody as quick as we can, and we appreciate all the support. And yeah, for now, I'm gonna be signing off, and then look for another stream in the next couple of days, and maybe we'll have some additional news and some additional screens to share with everybody. So thank you for joining tonight, and we'll see you next time.